there's something to Funkadelic. The second Funkadelic we've covered, correct? Because we have to go way back to, was it Maggot Brain?
Gosh, that might have been episode 1 of the season.
It was very early in the 1970s. And we also, if you remember, covered Parliament.
Episode 2
as well.
Episode 2. Thank you, Josh. Yeah. All right, we did Parliament.
And we've covered Parliament, which is a sister, cousin, whatever.
Sister lover.
Familial,
sister lover.
Sister lover of Funkadelic. But this is definitely Funkadelic. So why don't you run the numbers, Matt, and then Josh will start us off.
All right, so this is One Nation Under a Groove by Funkadelic, coming in at number 316 in the 1970s on Best Ever Albums, number 28 in 1978, number 1,560 of all time. It did make Rolling Stone's list, coming in at number 360, and it's, Funkadelic's second highest rated album behind 1971's Maggot Brain, which we did cover in episode 2, like Josh just said.
I'll tell you one thing that it didn't check in on, Spotify. Because not
Good
to
point.
be found. Yeah,
I think I saw too that this is their best-selling album, so I'm surprised it's not on Spotify. But
are they mad at Joe Rogan?
No, I don't think it's that reason.
No.
Well, considering they made their music like available for everybody to sample, Parliament.
That's true. Right?
Did. I
George
can't
Clinton,
imagine there too. Yeah,
that's right.
This was a great album. I really enjoyed listening to it. It's kind of like the epitome of funk now in my mind. Every song is just, it feels like tons of fun. Like the artists are having fun. That it's so fun to dance to. There's so much going on in the album. I feel like in songs there's so much layering, there's so many different voices, there's so many different beats. I feel like I've picked out things that I heard before in other songs at some point but couldn't place, and it is just kind of this like kind of joyful funkadelic sound in your brain when you're listening to it. The song titles themselves, are clearly, Outkast and other bands have been influenced by those types of sounds, like Groove Allegiance, all one word, and that fourth track that I can't even is so long that
you got to break it apart, Josh.
It's
pro mental shit, backwash psychosis, enema squad, the doo-doo chasers.
Exactly. So a song title like that, you really know what they're all about. It's a mental musical bowel movement. I think they said in the Doo Doo Chasers. It's also groove lax, so they're having fun. The bass in this is amazing. I will say the synths that they use are amazing. There's a great guitar solo, and who says a funk band can't play rock, which is funny in and of itself. I think they name check other genres as well. And it's hard. This is a hard album to process, but I really just enjoyed the overall experience of it. And I think their whole ethos is probably to get you to move and groove, and they succeed on that front.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. This was a fantastic album. I mean, let's start with what it sounds like. So you have an idea of what funk sounds like, and a lot of what you would imagine if you have a cursory idea of funk, it holds up to it, right? It's the sort of that fuzzed out sound with the bass, the driving bass, and collaborative lyrics, upbeat tempo, the drumming that sort of at times is like a jazz drumming, but at times is like an upbeat drumming. So all that's there, synths, stuff like that. All of that is there. But things that stood out to me is how much of a rock album this is, guys. And I know that a lot of times people had talked about what was called the black rock movement in the 70s, which was sort of like traditional R&B soul type sounds mixed with like rock and guitar playing, and this has some really good guitar on the album. That was one of the things I wanted to bring up right off the bat. It's like guitar but in dance music. Does that make, and I guess later somebody like Prince would take it in a different direction, right? You know what I mean? Like take the guitar and dance grooves. And this doesn't sound exactly like Prince, but it doesn't not sound like Prince either, And so if you're looking for a comparative point and especially what like early Prince sounds like, like Dirty Mind Prince and stuff. It's got elements of that here. It also has throwbacks to like the funk that we've covered up to this point, not just their own Parliament and Funkadelics, but also it's further away from like the Curtis Mayfield funk, but it's definitely got R&B stylings here as well. It's amazing how much of Funkadelic sound shaped West Coast rap too. That's the other thing that it's just so many of these things are basically just basically just pilfered and plundered to make it. And the reason it should is because it's perfect either in bite size or large meals, right? The whole longer songs, because a lot of the songs are like 6, 7, 8 minute, and Pro Mental, Shitback, Wash, Psychosis, Enema Squad, the Doo-Doo Chasers, right? That's how'd I do on
that's
that,
over
guys?
10. That's good.
It's
That's good.
10:45, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, they're long form things, but they can be, built into like little 30-second bits that you can lock in on, or even just sample sized like 10-second loops. I just really liked it. There's always stuff that interests you. It never, all the Parliament and Funkadelic stuff like never loses me. And we're not even listening to it, guys, in its ideal form, I don't think. I think this is designed to be played live, even more than like album format, which makes it even more remarkable because it's such an easy to listen to album. So yeah, strong recommend for this one too. I really like this album.
Yeah, so I thought this was interesting compared to the first Funkadelic album that we covered, and because this is what I thought that album was going to sound like. I remember when we listened to that, I was thinking, man, I thought it was going to be more funky, and it was certainly that, but it wasn't like this. Like this reminded me more of the Parliament album that we covered, and yeah, I like this as well. I just get a big smile when I listen to this stuff because the amount of times that they use the word funk and the different ways that they use it, it's just like it's so over the top and it's so funny. Like it should be called One Nation Under a Funk, right? Like it's just everything. It's almost like they're the Smurfs of funk, right? Like the Smurfs always use the word Smurf. Like they're always using the word funk just to describe everything. And I think it's hysterical. And I think that they get creative with it and the wordplay and the really long, album, the titles of the songs and stuff like that. It's just, it's fun, right? And I agree. I think that this is a type of musical genre that's best probably seen live. There seems like there's just a lot of members. I don't know how many people are actually playing on this or singing on it, but there's lots of vocals, right? There's not just the lead vocalist, but there's a lot of like background singers, female and male singers, and you can just tell there's a lot of different instruments going on. And it just seems like it's a lot of fun. Very danceable. Some of it's got a little bit. One Nation Under a Groove had a little bit of a James Brown kind of like ha ha thing going on. They were kind of throwing that down. And I agree that the guitar solo on Who Says a Funk Band Can't Play Rock, that it's like a shredding. The guy was shredding on the guitar, like at the end, was just kind of going nuts. And so, that was interesting.
Which was present, by the way, on Maggot Brain. That is a common
That's
theme,
true.
because there was great guitar playing on that album, too.
That opening track was of Maggot Brain was very much like a 9-minute kind of, there was like a huge guitar solo in that. That was a little bit more subdued, though. This was a little bit more of a boisterous type of guitar playing. But yeah, whoever that is playing the guitar is pretty good. Kind of knows what they're doing.
Well, no, it's a different person, I think, because the guitar player on that left the band shortly afterwards.
Okay. Well, they pick good guitar players in general then. So. Yep. The only downside, I think, I was a little bit like that Pro Mental Shit Backwash Psychosis song was a little bit. It was long. It was the thing that it was just a lot of talking, and like I got a little. There were no fart noises on this album, but there was a lot of talk of like, the metaphors of taking a shit, right? Like psychological turd remover and neurological enema and all this stuff. And they just keep going. And like the call and response with that, it got a little bit tiring for me, that part, but musically I liked it fine, but it was just like, I don't know, I would have preferred some singing as maybe a little bit of that talking part, but that was essentially the entire vocals of it. They were just kind of going through all these different ways of saying, hey, we're going to clean you out with the funk, so that was a little bit probably my own criticism of this record, but overall very fun, upbeat, danceable record. And I don't know, it's interesting. Obviously this isn't the genre that I know a whole lot about, but it doesn't seem like this seems like something is somewhat universal to people in terms of like getting a lot of people to like it. And I don't know, like how was this not more popular? You know, like how weren't there more bands that did this?
Well, it was popular. It was popular in Black America. This is where I think it's one of these things where, like, let's be honest, there was like extremely popular music that was kept off the radio in certain formats, you know what I mean? Or and this was like stuff that I think was deemed as black music, right? And so
that makes sense at the time. And that makes sense at the time. But I'm wondering like how there were never like any offshoots later on. You know what I mean? Because this seems like there could have been like a revival.
All of West Coast hip hop is based off this. So
right.
I mean,
I guess
literally,
maybe that's it. Yeah.
One Nation Under a Groove is the song "Bop Gun" by Ice Cube. I mean. He even, you know, that, like, you know, one nation under a groove. Yeah. Uh-huh. I mean, that's Bop Gun by Ice Cube, you know.
Right, but it's taking that and transforming it into rap, which is a different, you know, genre. But
you're saying where is the follow up to it? There it is.
There was the follow up. You're right, but I'm not talking about the metamorphosis. I'm just talking about like. You know, there's certain genres that like it's just like this would still be great today. This is, you know, and it's interesting that that never really took off even in the white community, because even, you know, in the 80s and 90s when maybe white people would be a little bit more, or radio stations would be a little bit more apt to playing some of this stuff, that there weren't bands or artists that were trying to, you know, recapture this or try to replicate this. And maybe all the energy went into rap. Maybe that's where it was. But this is my point is that this is just it's just very catchy and fun. I think lots of people could like it, and the fact that, you know, it wasn't as popular in the mainstream was interesting. But yeah, you're probably right, John. It probably has to go to with the radio stations and what they would and would not play.
I'm going to have to indulge something right here, because the personnel from the liner notes on this album is fan-freaking-tastic.
Oh, do you mean their names?
I'm going to read it. Yeah, no, just everything. Oh, yes. So let me read you the liner notes, okay? The Throbosonic Funk guitarists are Mike Kid Funkadelic Hampton and Gary Scheider. The banjoed Mother Plucker is Bobby Lewis. The Avatarian, which I guess is someone who plays the ARP synthesizer, is Mike Hampton. The keyboardans and synthezoides are Bernie Da Vinci Worrell and Walter Junie Morrison. The roto-funky drum and percussionating thumpadans are Jerome Braley, W. Bootsy Collins, Larry Fratangelo, and Tyrone Lampkin. The bass thumpasaurians are William Bootsy Collins, which I think is funny because he was W. Bootsy Collins on the drums. Rodney Skeet Curtis, which makes me think of skeet. And then Cordell Boogie Mawson. And then the Funkadelic Blamgusta Vocaloids, parentheses, Voices for the Nation, are George Clinton, Raymond Stingray Davis, Ron Ford, Malia Franklin, Lynn Mabry, W. Junie Morrison, Cordell Masson, Dawn Silva, Gary Doo-Wop Scheider, Greg Thomas, Jeanette Washington, and Debbie Wright. So you were right, Matt. Everybody sang on this album.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's the personnel.
They just have fun. They have all these. Yeah, they're playing off stuff. They're having a good time, and that's a good record.
And one thing, Matt, I think this band still existed and toured until fairly recently, so I think they are kind of their own carrying on that tradition as well too. So I think like what John said, I think seeing them live is like an experience.
Yeah, and I remember seeing George Clinton, on MTV and being interviewed and stuff like that. They still had a presence. I remember going, who's George? This guy's got crazy hair.
Right.
I also think it's like instead of other bands forming, they just kept adding young people to the band.
Yeah.
And so like Funkadelic and Parliament like always were the sound.
Yeah.
It was just with younger versions of it. So I think instead of
interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
agreed.
I think that's it. So yeah, thumbs up for me on this one. I like this quite a bit.